Welcome into the Awesemo.com live for lock shows. We're here to get you ready for UFC 272. Goes down tonight, of course, in the T-Mobile Arena there in Las Vegas, headlined by former friends, now bitter rivals, Colby Covington and Serghei Masvidal. Also co-main event, Rafael dos Anjos taking on Renato Moicano. Of course, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. We'll talk about Prize Picks here later on in the show. Of course, you got any questions, line those up in chat. Also line those up in our score chat. We'll get to those as we do go on. This is usually the point of the show where I say, let's welcome in the fighter. But I'm just going to say, let's welcome in the president of the Khamzat Chimaev fan club, Pete Rogers Jr.
Fair enough. What's up, Jason? What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us here for an exciting card, UFC 272. We got a hell of a fight card. Very difficult from a betting and DFS perspective, in my opinion. If you feel comfortable with it, you might have an absolute edge this week. I'm finding it a little difficult to firmly believe in certain fighters because I noticed that the matchup is volatile, and given their history within the past of how they could end up, spoiling some fights for us where everybody's thinking it's an automatic win. But regardless, I'm happy to be here with you, Jason, and I can't wait to get into it.
So to let everyone a little insight here. So last night, me and Pete we're texting late night about this fight card. And, we talked about this on Thursday this is a tough DFS card because there are fights throughout this fight card that you just go, man, you know what? I can see it going one way. I can see it go another way. And maybe we really don't have a hot take on that fight one way or another. But there's one fight that me and Pete started really discussing. Actually, there's two fights we got discussing. One of them is a pure ownership. And I got to say, when Pete sent me the screenshot, I did not realize how low this fighter's ownership is. But when we talk about underdogs under 8K, Greg Hardy is a really interesting play today.
For sure. He's an interesting play. And, he has looked like a green mixed martial artist from time to time. And, he did rock Tai Tuivasa in the last one. And if he can catch you on the chin, he can knock out anybody within this division. And he's quite massive as well. It's just, he has round one type of potential because that's basically all he can do. And he has a non-existent ground game, which I'm sure he's working towards, improving from camp to camp. But I just think the ownership on him is just extremely low in a matchup where Serghei Spivac has shown to not like getting hit. And if Greg Hardy does one thing well in mixed martial arts, it's hit people with good combinations and strong, powerful punches. So I feel like that fight, from a skill standpoint, Serghei Spivac is clearly the A side and the better fighter. But I think heavyweight MMA, extremely volatile. He's going under owned, and it's somebody that I'm okay with, sprinkling exposure to and getting above the field.
There was the other fighter that we were talking about, someone who's also under 8,000. He's 7,800 over on DraftKings, $16 there over on FanDuel. Nicolae taking on Nzechukwu here. By the way, if you did not see the ceremonial weigh-ins, Joe Rogan clearly is going to call him Nicolae the whole fight because he did not want to say his last name.
I did. I'm interested in this fight because I feel like a lot of people aren't, and not really interested in the Kennedy Nzechukwu side. I think that he's shown to get quite lucky within the UFC, even dating back, to the Contender Series. There are moments where he just does not look to be UFC ready. Fighting Paul Craig, who, if Paul Craig does anything well, it's have a strong submission game. And he ended up getting almost swept with a technique, caught in a triangle, escaped it, and then was put right back into it and ended up, submitting because of that. He has a victory over Darko Stosic, which is largely due because of the point deductions from the referee taking Darko Stosic. I think it was two points, something ridiculous. He was getting beaten to a pulp against Carlos Ulberg in round one and looked like he was on his way out, and ended up coming back because Carlos Ulberg just completely collapsed in the cardio department. And then Danilo Marquez in that bout had his back taken for one full round, and majority of the second round was not going his way as well. So if there's one thing that I can give credit to Kennedy Nzechukwu is that he can deal with adversity and come back. But I mean, you're not always going to be lucky like that. And, a fighter in Daoun Jung, who I think is much more talented than Nick Negumereanu, I still think that there is some volatility here surrounding Kenny Nzechukwu. And I don't mind getting to Nicolae at all, honestly, because he's an aggressive striker, but he has a pretty strong wrestling background, which a lot of people don't realize. And I really feel like, from the Darko Stosic fight and other things that I've seen, there's finishing potential on the mat and there's finishing potential standing up. So I went a little bit above the field on Nicolae today.
By the way, speaking of those ceremonial weigh-ins, two notable takeaways that I had, and sometimes it's when we have these pay-per-views, because they're the only ones that truly have a ceremonial weigh-ins at this point, is that you can see fighters after they've rehydrated for 8+ hours. And the very first fight of the night, which I don't really love to getting GPP wise, of Jacoby and Olszewski, you can really see who the 205er is and who is really the guy that's pretty much really stuck between two weight classes of 185 and 205 pounds, that being Olszewski. The other one is Jorge Masvidal pointing at Colby Covington's knee and saying, did you take those cortisone shots?
Yeah, I mean,
interesting comments.
Yeah, absolutely interesting comments. And it's mind games, but it's also intel. And I'm sure that they've heard of something. I mean, Florida's small enough, especially for mixed martial arts, where, you hear things. Like even up here in Connecticut, I hear things just from knowing certain people. And same goes for you. You hear a lot of things about New England, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm interested with the matchup for sure. And I mean, if there is something wrong with Colby Covington's knee, like we could see that Khalil Roundtree, Modestas Bukauskas thing where, Jorge doesn't care if he blows his knee out. He goes out there and he just stomps his knee into an oblivion. But I think it's whatever's going to happen on Jorge's side. He's going to try to be as violent as possible, but he also has to make sure to keep his emotions in check because he does have, one of the best, if not the second best mixed martial artists within the welterweight division. It's a tough fight for sure for both sides, but I can't wait. And to kind of circle back on the Dustin Jacoby, Mikhail Olszewski, I thought Dustin Jacoby looked like, a true weight class higher than him. And it goes to show you that Olszewski is somewhat undersized. He packs a hell of a punch, but he could be dealing with a lot of adversity within this bout against a guy who's such a talented kickboxer. So all in all, I can't wait. This is a crazy card. And, we got people saying they're planting their flag on certain fighters and firmly believing in some others. So I think everybody's all over the place this week, which could end up being an interesting optimal lineup.
No question about that. Of course, appreciate everyone that's here on a Saturday afternoon. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, also right here on YouTube, be sure to do that as well. And of course, if you're not a premium member over Awesemo Plus and you want to get a little peek what's behind the paywall, today's free premium data and tools are UFC Pro Plays, NBA player rankings, and NHL player rankings. Also, we do have our podcast giveaway going on. Be sure to head over to Awesemo MMA podcast channel, leave a 5-star rating and review with your Twitter handle or Awesemo username, and you'll be entered into win a free month of Also Plus Platinum. So appreciate everyone that's in here on a Saturday afternoon. Speaking about who we maybe lock in our lineups, Richie over at our score chat, I'll start with the question with him. He says, are there any fights tonight you're completely fading? Any fights potentially stack? Any fight you have 100% exposure to? The stack aspect for me, and this is just a game theory for me, the only time I really consider stacking is when we're under 10 fights. So tonight is not one of those situations. In terms of fights that I'm potentially fading, let's see here. I didn't find myself getting to a ton of Holland Oliveira.
Really?
And also Jacoby Olszewski. Just because the volatility of the fights, kind of, I'd rather go a situation. I mean, look, there's volatility all over this card. I will tell you this: in my 20 max, I locked in one fighter, and that name is Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah, exactly. So, if there's most exposure on the slate, I think naturally everybody's going to have most exposure to the co-main event. You have two fighters under 8K in a 5-round bout, one of them taking it on short notice in Renato Moicano. And, he's had to deal with a lot this week, and it's a lot of, jet lag, time travel, just time travel, time travel. Imagine time travel. No, but a lot of time, traveling and having to cut weight, even though it wasn't, a ton of weight, he still looks like he balloons up out of camp against the guy in Rafael dos Anjos, who has been preparing for a 5-round bout against Rafael Fiziev. So I naturally I'm full disclosure, I'm all in on Rafael dos Anjos. I talked to my jiu-jitsu coach. I talked to some great minds in the sport as well. And I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting the correct take on things, and that Rafael dos Anjos possesses the superior jiu-jitsu and the superior grappling advantage. So, and he does. His experience at 170 pounds speaks for itself. His experience and resume at 155 pounds. Renato Moicano has been chinny at times. In the first round against Alexander Hernandez, it looked like he was gassing towards the end of it. And it was just a small grappling exchange, and goes to show you, man, like, it's a lot to be, fight ready for 15 minutes. So when somebody can do it at a high pace, you have to respect it. And I'm all in on Rafael dos Anjos, but Renato Moicano's boxing looked improved. Oddly enough, he has not found a TKO or KO yet in his career. So I don't foresee him finding one today, and I definitely do not see him submitting Rafael dos Anjos. So I'm all in on RDA.
And note, this is a 25-minute fight. Something to note in terms of that. Look, when you looked at them yesterday after the weigh-ins, RDA looks like a guy who has been in training for 8 weeks. Where you look at Renato Moicano, he looks like a guy who's probably been enjoying himself since the last fight a little bit. And obviously he had to cut 20 pounds to make weight yesterday. So that is something to play there. We'll start over with the YouTube questions here. And Sean looking for top underdog besides RDA.
It's a weird week, man. It really is. But I think for me, just from, I've already mentioned Negumereanu. My fear is that goes the distance. I think that just the ownership, from an ownership standpoint, I think Greg Hardy's just going a little too light, to be honest.
Yeah, there's several fighters I look at under that 8,000 range that do intrigue me. Look, you start right at the top of Jorge Masvidal. If Jorge is going to pull this off, to me, it is him knocking Colby Covington out in the first 10 minutes. If this thing hits the round 3, I think it's advantage Colby Covington. The one thing and look, the pre-fight press conference was
childish.
Yeah, there's a lot of words I could say on describing that. But the one thing that I did wonder at when I walked away from it was, man, is Colby Covington just playing Colby Covington, the character, or is Colby Covington very emotional heading into this one? And will potentially the emotions get the best of him in this fight? That was, to me, the only question. Look, if Colby Covington goes out there and beats Colby Covington, like I've said this on my show, I said it on the Strategy Show on Thursday. A lot of people, when they view Colby Covington, they view Colby Covington the character. They don't view Colby Covington the fighter. And the fact is, this guy is an extremely talented fighter. And in a world where Kamaru Usman does not exist, Colby Covington right now is the UFC welterweight champion. There's no question about it. So, but if he does not implement his full arsenal, as in he lets his ego get the best of him and tries to have a striking matchup, that to me, where you side with Jorge Masvidal. And look, if there's anything too, maybe Colby's got a little banged up knee. That may be the most interesting thing to see. Does Masvidal come out in the first 60 seconds, and does he start targeting that knee? If he does, to me, that tells me someone's been giving Masvidal some intel.
Yeah, for sure. So, with Colby Covington, I think that he can push a pace that not too many people can keep up with, and that's how he's had so much success within the UFC. And Jorge Masvidal, I'm going to say he's going to defend some takedowns. I just think if you're Colby, you have to be stubborn with your wrestling approach, and you just have to, shoot over 10 takedowns in hopes of getting a third of them. Just because that this guy and Jorge Masvidal has, Bo Nickel and all these tremendous wrestlers helping him out through this camp, and even the Kamaru Usman camps. And I do think that you just have to flood Masvidal with volume, and if he implements that, he will do what a lot of people are saying and what they're hoping, and he'll get the W. But if he gets lured into a brawl and it's becomes somewhat of an emotional fight on both ends, which you can't really say that which fighter is going to be a little bit more emotional than the other, I mean, you would like to say that probably Jorge Masvidal has more to be upset about than Colby Covington from everything that's been said. But, these guys used to care about each other. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. The one thing with Masvidal is that, he has great boxing. And, in the Usman Covington fight, you did see where Covington was hit numerous times with that right cross. And, you have Jorge Masvidal with a great right hand. And, Colby Covington's extremely hittable. But that's only if he just keeps it at boxing range. I mean, that's why I have exposure to both sides. It's not where I firmly believe in one or the other. This could also be a situation where we've seen former sparring partners and training partners go out there and put up a dud where it's a respectful showing and they're both a little hesitant and worried. So they fight a little reserved. They fight a little bit more calculated and careful. And, that's why I did avoid the main event in some of my lineups. It's very difficult to get away from for most of them, just given it's a 5-round fight and you have one of the most volume heavy fighters that we've seen for DFS and Colby Covington. So yeah, I avoided it a little bit, but it's very difficult to get away from for most of it.
For me, this card's a prime example where Fantasy Cruncher came so critical for me in developing my lineups, setting up groups of saying how much I want to get to, you wanting to, tell Cruncher not to give you 50,000 salary and try to help you differentiate yourself from that. Of course, also, if you're not an Awesemo Plus member, you got to sign up right now for that weekly pass, $29.95. So you can get access to everything we got over at Awesemo.com. Of course, those ownership projections are so critical for me in helping develop my lineup. We talked about Greg Hardy a little bit. Of course, if you just want an Awesemo MMA Plus package, those start as low as $2.95 a week. So be sure to sign up there. Go over to Awesemo.com/join to sign up today, because that is going to help you get the edge that you do need. I know there was a question in Discord earlier about kind of my game theory in terms of cash today. For the most part, for me, it was RDA and pairing him with either Yan Jinan or Jorge Masvidal. And then basically it's going to allow you to get to everyone. In cash, I will tell you that I was able to put a lineup where I did not have to pair RDA with a low price option, just because I'm telling you what, this may be a car where if you tell me the optimal lineup has 4 underdogs, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, not at all. And if you guys want to listen to somebody who's extremely smart and intelligent when it comes to cash games, it's Jason. Like, he's a cash game king. So his lineup constructions, usually right on. And I have to agree with him that there are some cheap options that allow you to just pay up for all the best guys that you want. And, playing in cash is definitely the best way to build your bankroll to a point. And then you could start sprinkling in some GPP, some 3 max, and then get to 20 and then the 150 max. And that's when a tool like Fantasy Cruncher really helps you, when you can diversify your ownership and exposure levels and all that stuff. So extremely grateful for Awesemo. Happy to have everybody in here. But I do agree with you that, like, for me, when I was making my lineups, I don't want lineups with 50,000 spent. Like, I truly don't, not today, because there are some weeks where, we're not so confident in underdogs coming through. I'm really worried about a lot of underdogs coming through. And a buddy of mine, Aiden, and I had a conversation on Twitter earlier, and he said, and I agree with that, you can make an argument for multiple underdogs on this, and almost all of them where they have a path to victory, and it's just a matter of implementing it. So for me, it's leaving money on the table and creating groups over on Awesemo. I was talking to Tyler about it, and I think just getting to at least 2 underdogs makes a ton of sense for lineup construction this week.
No question about that. Sales guy over Discord asked about the first fight of the night. To me, I think if Jacoby, so I talked to Jacoby about 3 weeks ago, and the key thing I took away from the conversation was he talked about how he's got to be careful with the power that Oleksiejczuk does have in his hands. I do think what you're going to probably see is a heavy leg kick arsenal from Jacoby in this matchup. It's one of these things of I am concerned about the power that Oleksiejczuk has in his hands. I mean, Jacoby, I'll be honest with you, when I saw the betting odds for the first time, I was a little surprised to see how big of a favorite Jacoby was in the matchup. Just I didn't think he'd be that big of a favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Oleksiejczuk, if he has one thing going for him, is that he hits really hard and he's aggressive and he likes the crowd space. And a fighter in Dustin Jacoby's a master at range and a master at maintaining space. So I think you're going to see Dustin Jacoby, probing him with that lead hand, keeping him away from him as best as he can. As long as he uses footwork, he should be able to avoid Oleksiejczuk, who barrels forward a lot. I like Oleksiejczuk as an underdog just because of that power that he possesses and the fact that we have seen Dustin Jacoby, get hit and rocked. Maxime Grisham, even a big guy, but still, it's just something where, all these fights over kickboxing and MMA, they can start catching up with you. So, I do think that you could do worse than getting to Oleksiejczuk from an underdog standpoint. But as far as like technicalities, I think Dustin Jacoby can pick him apart and be just a technician in this matchup. Switch stances when you need to, calf kick when you need to, straight punches, keep him at bay, and utilize some footwork to just kind of, look like the superior kickboxer here today.
So our guy Tyler just put up in the chat a poll question. How many underdogs are in the optimal tonight? I made my vote. I said 3.
Yeah, I said 3 as well.
And I'm surprised. Only 28% are going with us so far at this point at 3, 55% at 2, and 9% none.
I like these polls. We got to do more of them. We got 450 people in here, only 45 votes. Vote in that poll. We want to hear from you. And if you don't mind, hit that like button, get us up to 200. We'd really appreciate it.
Spencer would like to know our favorite MVPs on FanDuel and favorite underdog over on FanDuel. Of course, we did the strategy show. The FanDuel salaries were not out yet. I would say this, my favorite underdog, I would go Umar Nurmagomedov.
From a MVP?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and that is a nice little number at MVP. Ownership, it makes sense why the guy who's number 1 is number 1, but I think you could do worse than a 22 Umar Nurmagomedov in your MVP. He has equal upside of takedowns in a weight class where there is a high pace. And I think that Brian Kelleher is skilled enough to get back to his feet, but I don't think he's skilled enough to necessarily survive if Umar Nurmagomedov goes extremely aggressive today. Like if Umar wants a finish, he can find one. He can find one on the mat. He can find one striking.
In terms of an underdog over on FanDuel, the problem is I just don't know if he'll score well in a win. Edson Barboza.
I agree with you. That's the thing is like there are some fighters on here where they can pull off the victory and they can possibly ruin a parlay of yours or a money line bet of yours, right? Like let's say Tim Elliott. Now, normally Tim Elliott has some upside for DFS because he has tons of volume. He has tons of takedown potential, all of that. I don't necessarily think that he wants to get into so many wrestling scrambles and grappling situations with a guy of Ulanbakov's level, a guy coming out of Khabib's camp. I think that his game plan would be dance around the outside, bury some leg kicks, and avoid grappling at all costs. So yes, he could spoil your money line and your parlay bets. I just don't know, even if in a win, he doesn't have that same type of upside in normal matchups because he's not the superior wrestler here today.
Another question that came in was about how, basically how to try to avoid dupes on DraftKings. Mm-hmm. If you want to get different, don't put RDA in your lineup.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do here today, Pete, because of that salary, but that is a way to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely a way to differentiate yourself. And, RDA could win and somehow not be optimal. Maybe a 3rd round victory does it for him. And we got some other underdogs that really, really come through and score at a high level. And, Renato Moicano is dangerous. It's just accepting a fight on short notice when you're not the superior grappler. You have 0 TKOs or KOs to your record, and you're fighting a guy who has been training for 5 rounds. So RDA is a staple within my lineups, but I get what you're saying. If you want to be different and you're looking at this from like a black and white type of situation and you're just viewing the data for what it is, sure, get away from it a little bit. Get away from maybe even the main event. I know that's hard. It's going to be very difficult, but that's where everybody's going to go to immediately. It's the main event and co-main event.
Let's go. Brian here. He says, why is RDA considered such a lock? He's not that heavy a favorite. Is it crazy to get Moicano in some lineups? Look, I don't think it's crazy to get Moicano, but to me, this is if you are putting Moicano in your lineup, the mindset has to be he's getting a finish early on in the first, second round. If this thing gets third, fourth, fifth round, I just think it is advantage RDA. He's the guy that's been in a training camp for Renato Moicano. You probably just got to go balls to the wall right from the start, because it really comes of he's not been at ATT. He's been down in Brazil.
Yeah.
Has he been enjoying Brazilian life, or has he actually been training?
I mean, you've been preparing your whole life for big situations like this, but it's not optimal to take a 5-round fight. But I think that he saw what Paul Felder did on 5 days notice and wasn't really training, and he was just training for a marathon, and said, well, I just had a fight 4 weeks ago, so I'm not like in bad shape. My issue is less of that and more about how is he going to win, because I don't like, for RDA, you need to be a dominant wrestler, and like Moicano can get takedowns, and he's pretty good at outside tripping people and taking them down, getting in top position and incorporating his jiu-jitsu. His hands have developed over time, but he does not he has 0 KOs or TKOs to his record. And that's a way to catch RDA cold, or RDA coming out a little flat, like how Eddie Alvarez did. And he just completely overwhelmed him. And that is some time ago. But RDA is literally seen everything within there. And if you're not the superior grappler and you have a suspect gas tank, I just like to think that RDA finds a way to do it inside the distance, and he has 5 rounds to work with. So I think from a betting standpoint, there's value on RDA inside the distance. And I truthfully don't understand how the odds aren't wider. Renato Moicano does not have a full camp. If he did, this may be a different conversation, but I still think it would be the same result.
Well, and also it'd be a different conversation if the salaries were
right.
If the salaries were what they're on FanDuel as opposed to what there are on DraftKings. The reason that I personally love RDA is because that $7,300 price tag over on DraftKings. Next question coming in here from our Discord chat. He says, last man in your opinion, is it worth getting to Moroz or Hardy as a center underdog, or go all the way down to Masvidal, leading money to the table? Thanks in advance. And mentions later that he's leaning towards going Moroz. I would go Hardy just because of the upside, because if Greg Hardy wins this fight, he's going to win by knockout in the first round, and it's not going to get you 100 points. So that's why I would go with Greg Hardy.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards Greg Hardy. I think the women's bout between Marina Moroz and Maria Agapova will be competitive, and they definitely have some dirt on each other. And you got Marina Moroz fighting for other reasons outside the cage as well, with a nation, behind her, and in a very difficult time, which could definitely lead to an outlier performance here. And, in her past 2 fights, she has attempted more takedowns than she has throughout her career. 9 takedown attempts against Sabina Mazo, 8 takedown attempts against Mayra Bueno Silva. It's a path to victory that I think is a nice little wrinkle in a competitive striking affair against Agapova, because when we've seen Agapova hit the mat, she's not she can get controlled. She can lose rounds. And I think that Marina Moroz has volume to match, does not have the power to match Agapova. So I don't think that either one of these underdogs are a bad play. You could just have a situation where Marina Moroz pulls off like a 80-point victory, whereas if Greg Hardy pulls off the victory, it's likely a first round KO.
By the way, speaking of what's going on in Ukraine, Jeff Nowitzki had this tweet the other day. Denis Bondar, his home and gym, as he wrote, has been shelled in Ukraine.
Wow.
So something to play in there. By the way, for as much heat as Marina Moroz and Agapova have against each other, very friendly during the ceremony weigh-ins.
I thought so too. It was so weird. They shook hands, then fist bumped and shook hands, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I was expecting.
I thought you hate each other.
Yeah. I don't know. She's over here calling, her a junkie, and she's trying to stab coaches at ATT, and then they're trying to be buddy at the weigh-in. I wasn't really too sure what was going on, but hopefully, if there is some animosity, they express it a little bit better than they did at the weigh-ins.
Of course, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. You guys sign up over there at prizepicks.com. Of course, when you sign up, deposit, and play over at Prize Picks. You'll get a free month of also plus platinum. And of course, be sure to use that promo code Awesemo so you can get an instant first match deposit of up to $100. And of course, that when you do get that free month of also plus platinum, you get an email within 24 to 40 hours, let you know about that. The one thing that really stuck out to me when I was over on Prize Picks earlier on today is that RDA fight time has not moved. Still 22.5, still an underplay for me. I will tell you, I like the under on Serghei Spivac, which is at least earlier today was 7.5. Also, the under on Devontae Smith, nine. What was it? I want to say it was 9.5. Yeah, he was 9.5. Those three on fight times is probably my top 3 plays over there on Prize Picks today.
Yeah, man, you're sharp. I would agree with you. I think that there's some value to be had over at Prize Picks. I wish I could play in my state. And if you can, play for me. All right, just do it. Go out there and enjoy the great promo we got going on, and take advantage of some of these lines. I think that you can be profitable.
Yeah, I mean, I seeing it's now 20 minutes for RDA. Still love the under in that one. Still love
as well. I do as well. And I think it goes to show you how like these lines can change, and how, you know, if you listen to our shows on the strategy show, you could have hopped on that and had some insane value.
It's crazy. So be sure to check out Prize Picks over there. As I mentioned, my top 3 plays over Prize Picks, they are the under fight time on Rafael dos Anjos, Serghei Spivac, and Devontae Smith. By the way, speaking of Devontae Smith and Serghei Spivac, Anthony asking Smith or Spivac. Man, I feel like both of these fights are boom busts totally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I probably more go with Devontae Smith over Spivac, just because of having more faith in a Greg Hardy with his power as opposed to Klein.
I kind of view them almost the same, if I'm being honest. Like, this is where creating a group can be extremely helpful, and it can kind of take away from like some bias you may have, and you can just get, true exposure how you need to. But I truthfully, if you want to like compare the skills, Ludovic Klein's not a bad fighter by any means, and he can mix in takedowns. So the fight against Devontae Smith, who looked like he was somewhat checked out the second Malarkey hit him to the body and started to press him. You have Serghei Spivac going up against a guy who's extremely one-dimensional, but he does that one thing pretty good, and that's throw hands. So I would personally just say towards Serghei Spivac, despite, me viewing Hardy as a value play. I think there's grappling upside. What happens if Hardy gets taken down off of his back? We've seen him somewhat quit in the Marcin Tybura fight, and he can't get his inhaler in there. So like, what's going to happen? He has not really developed over the time like we thought that he could. So I'm going to lean Serghei Spivac, despite how close that is.
Next up, Jan or Masvidal for cash. This is a debate I've had with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Jan Janan may be the safer play in that situation.
Yes, 100%. And the reason it's safer, I still think she gets worked. I think that there's levels. I think that, Jan Janan can go out there and stand toe-to-toe with Marina Rodriguez for as long as she can until she gets hit with some power shots. She knows she's coming and working with Team Alpha Male as well, which I think is interesting because there's always that takedown type of approach or wrinkle to the game that can throw off your opponent. And I don't think she'll have success against Marina Rodriguez in that department, but this could be an exciting striking match between both. Tons of total strikes, tons of significant strikes. Whereas if Jorge Masvidal is pinned against the cage for 20 of 25 minutes, you're really limiting yourself with upside in that situation. But it's kind of like a 1A, 1B for cash. You just need a little bit of points and spending up in the correct places elsewhere. So I would say that Jan Janan, just given the way that I see the fight going.
Mentioned we got a trio of questions over in Discord. First up, thoughts on low ownership on Spivac Hardy fight when it's very unlikely to go distance. Yeah, we talked about that earlier on the show. I mean, but that's one of those situations of it's a boom bust type situation on both sides of the equation. I would be relatively surprised if this fight hits minute 7. You just know kind of the way Greg Hardy fights. I know there was a question earlier in the chat about potentially, Spivac. How much can he take it to the ground? I mean, when you see these two guys, Pete, they line up next to each other. I mean, Greg Hardy is a massive human being.
Yes, he is, and that's something that I was looking at in the face-offs, and I take everything from weigh-ins, with a grain of salt, and I don't really like try to view that in such high regard like some people do. The face-offs, it's just nice to see them square off to see if there's any physical advantages. And, I kind of go back and I think about how Serghei Spivac against Alexei Oleinik, how I thought it was going to be like a really, really strong performance. And if you struggle in the strength department against a guy who is, Alexei Oleinik at this point of his career, I think that Greg Hardy can keep you off of him for a period of time. As the fight goes on, it completely sides with Serghei Spivac. But I just found that to be interesting, and especially knowing how heavy Greg Hardy is outside of weigh-in day, it's just crazy because I think that if he was able to incorporate better takedown defense, he could actually go somewhere. I mean, it's heavyweight, right? Like, it's not the most skilled division. We are seeing some people kind of break that mold, but for the most part, it's heavyweight MMA. It's volatile, and that's why we love targeting it for DFS.
Next up, how much exposure do we have on the Smith-Klein fight? I think I was around 35% on this one.
Let me see. I believe I am kind of within that same exact thing. I'm like 40%, so nothing crazy. Kind of like viewing it neutral, where I want exposure to both sides. But man, trying to figure out who's going to win that bout or who's going to have a good performance is tough, especially because you have Ladova Klein coming up a weight class.
How much next up, thoughts on Jalen Turner versus Jamie Mullarkey fight? Leaning Turner. Chachi asked that question. My thought on that one is, if Mullarkey wins it, I think it's him going the takedown city route in this one. I don't think that Mullarkey is going to win a stand-up battle, but this is another fight. I mean, obviously price-wise, it's great on both sites. 8,200, 8,000 over on DK, 8,200 being for Jalen Turner, 17 and 15 over on FanDuel. I mean, this is a fight that I think it's got a good chance to be an optimal, but to me I did take some sprinkles on Mullarkey in this one. The whole thought process is he's able to utilize takedowns.
For sure. I mean, we've seen Mullarkey get rocked in the past and get staggered by shots. And if you want to think that, I think Jalen Turner can have success on the feet. There's no doubt about it. He can have success. And Mullarkey can have success on the feet, but he needs to close the gap. And against a guy who's so long and wiry, it's a little difficult. And then after you get hit with a couple shots, you're going to go into panic wrestling and resort to that to kind of help you win the fight. And that's where Jamie Mullarkey needs to really go out there and just change it. I think that Jalen Turner can defend takedowns, but Jamie Mullarkey looks like a pretty well-rounded mixed martial artist and coming off of great momentum, 2 back-to-back KOs of Devontae Smith and Kama Worthy early on within the UFC against Brad Riddell, who's an exceptional striker. He went 3 of 15 for takedown attempts, which is something to note because you would think that he'd like to lean on the takedowns a little bit more in this bout. And then against Farziem, who's an accredited kickboxer, not really dangerous on the feet, but extremely skilled. He went 5 of 11 in the takedown department. So I agree with you. I agree with your assessment. Takedown potential with Jamie Mullarkey. So I like getting to him a little bit more than the field, just giving the upside.
Next one was, how do we feel about Bryce Mitchell? To me, Bryce has got to be for pressure. Try to get this thing to the ground. If this stays at kickboxing range, then to me it is Edson Barboza's fight to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I was looking at Bryce at the weigh-ins and like, it's tough to read him. And, I feel like I know how it is, right? Like I know how nerve-wracking it is. And he looked a little nervous. But in addition to that, like, it does look like I saw like an injury on his right bicep, I believe it was, which, it's bruising, which can be from anything. I don't want to overthink it. And I don't want to because at the end of the day, fighters fight. We find a way to do it. And if you were able to make it through camp, you can make it through 15 minutes for the most part, unless it's like a leg injury. But, man, I would hate to see him going into a fight a little hobbled. But that's all speculation, and I don't like to speculate. I don't like to really look into something too bad unless it's clearly going to affect him. And it could just be bumps and bruises, man. Fight camp is brutal. Your training camp is brutal. Everybody goes in there at less than 100% every single time.
Excluding the main event and co-main event, what is the must roster fight for single entry GPPs on DraftKings? Sean, that's a great question. I mean, look, the problem is like I'll label 2 fights, but they're boom bust fights straight up. But to me, it's the heavyweight matchup, Serghei Spivac and Greg Hardy. And the second one would be the Smith Klein fight, because I just, to me, Devontae Smith is a guy that either he's going to go in there and get knocked out or he's going to get finished within 10.
I don't blame you for saying that, but I really feel like that Jalen Turner, Jamie Malarkey is fantasy points galore as well. Like, there's just so many. It's tough to really put your finger on it. We haven't talked about Kevin Holland, Cowboy Oliveira. Given both of them, Cowboy Oliveira, aggressive guy, defensively reckless, can get takedowns, and that's exactly what Kevin Holland's been struggling at. Kevin Holland hits really hard and has a sneaky submission game to him as well. So I feel like he could club and sub Alex Oliveira in a situation where it's just a little too much, and we see him pick up a submission win or get back to his winning ways. He could easily knock out Cowboy Oliveira. But Oliveira is really, really tough, and before he gets TKO'd, he somewhat gives up his neck. So I view that Holland fight as an extremely sneaky fight to target. But clearly, it's the co-main event for me. That's just a must-have.
I saw someone mention a little earlier about the 9,000 plays and, looking at Kevin Holland as a leverage play. To me, the leverage play in the 9,000 range is Marina Rodriguez, which leads into another question. This one came from Wayne, where he says, I don't understand the disrespect to Yan Janan, who is actually ranked higher than Rodriguez. Yan is 6,900 WTF. I'm all over that. Underdog, what do you guys think about this matchup? Look, this is a matchup that I don't love for GPPs. I like it for cash, because this is a fight that I just expect these two girls to just throw hands for 15 minutes. I don't think a stoppage is going to come. And a reason I really don't like GPPs, like, to me, like, you want to put Marina Rodriguez, I think there is some leverage there, but she's going to need to score knockdowns for her to be optimal at 9,300.
Yeah, and I think that she can. And I think that, if you look at her body of work, she doesn't look like she's a strong DFS performer. She has yet to score over 99 fantasy points. In this week, she's priced at 9,300. The 9,300 represents her skill set, extremely talented for the division, on a 3-fight heater over Mackenzie Dern, Michelle Waterson, and Amanda Hebos. Even in that KO victory, the second round KO victory over Amanda Hebos, she only scored 88 points. Now, she is getting better. Her ground game looks like it is developing a little bit. She was threatening Mackenzie Dern in a situation where she could have subbed somebody else, but Mackenzie Dern's just extremely tough, and you're not going to sub Mackenzie Dern. She'll let you break limbs and do whatever before she taps. The takedowns kind of out the door. She only shot 4 of them against Tisha Torres a while back in 2019. The knockdowns are where we could get some boosted points here. And in a striking affair where Yan Janan could easily welcome a striking affair, I like to lean towards the powerful Marina Rodriguez as a leverage play. So I'm kind of like not overthinking it and just viewing the ownership and saying, I like her. I expect her to go out there and beat Yan Janan. Yan Janan is more of a volume type fighter, less dangerous than Marina Rodriguez. So, I mean, all she needs to do is find another finish here. And she's in title contention, 100%.
Something to note here, because someone mentioned about the cage size. It is the bigger cage tonight because they're in the T-Mobile Arena. They're not in the UFC Apex, so you've got the big 30-footer, which is a drastic difference between that 25-footer. So something that I pay attention to there, of course. One of the things that Pete and I love to see after all the fights are over are those winning screenshots. We want to see you go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame tonight. Of course, what you got to be doing is rock that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile. You get that over awesemo.com/avatar. Finish in the top 3 with a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet your wins to @Awesemo HOF. You win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, you can only win one per calendar year. Of course, you can see the screenshots there up on the screen as Tyler's going to be rolling through some of those screenshots of people that we have seen go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame in the past couple of days. There you see Smoke Jones taking down first place in NBA contest, winning $1,000. Congratulations to you. My NBA lineups absolutely sucked last night. had to do that late swap with Jokic being out, so that kind of hurt me a little bit there. Scott also taking out first place there in a NBA contest, taking down $300. Congratulations to you over there. Of course, congratulations to everyone that has gone to the Awesemo Hall of Fame over the past couple of days. You'll see those scrolling there. So we hope to see you go into Awesemo Hall of Fame tonight for UFC 272. Next up, it says, do y'all still believe in Kevin Holland? I think this is a tailor-made matchup for him.
Yeah, I mean, he should win. And I could go down the entire card of who should win. Doesn't mean that they're going to. Kevin Holland, we could call his skills what they are. He's a good striker, sneaky jiu-jitsu, terrible wrestling. Needs to improve on his wrestling. He knows that. He has been. Alex Oliveira is a tough out. He is a tough out. And he zombies forward at times, extremely hittable. And you can get him out of there. You can make Alex Oliveira quit. You can even look at that fight against Randy Brown, where Alex Oliveira, he gets to a point and he wants out. And I think that Kevin Holland can easily do that. It's just Kevin Holland's on a skid right now. And sometimes it's a mental thing as well. And everybody thinking that you're going to rebound against Alex Oliveira. Guess what? Oliveira's training just as hard, but I favor Kevin Holland. I'd say 8 out of 10 times.
Try to we got under 10 minutes here left in the show. Try to get as many questions as possible here. Darren saying, hey, P, is there any betting picks you feel really good about, like the Kyle Phillips sub from UFC 271?
Appreciate that, buddy. So I like RDA inside the distance. I think that there's some value there. I don't really foresee Moicano lasting 5 rounds. And then just one other prop bet. You got to be careful with prop bets, not necessarily parlays for me, but I'll take shots here and there. I think that Tagir Ulanbekov via submissions quite interesting against Tim Elliott, who gets caught in submissions, and I think that he could tap relatively easily if he's shown the door. And I think that Tagir Ulanbekov, he just needs to incorporate the grappling early. So those are my 2 little sneaky submission props. Not the best week for it, but I favor the RDA one pretty heavily.
Of course, you got any questions, be sure to line that up. What's your 2 best high price scores? Looking at the 9,000 range, Colby Covington, if he goes out there and he's a fighter we know he is, it could be a massive score tonight. Could be a massive score, but Pete, you brought up a great point earlier in the show. 2 former training partners go up against each other. Sometimes it can look like a sparring matchup as opposed to a fight.
Yeah, and it's just respect for each other. You know what each other brings to the table, and I think that they could be a little hesitant at times, which could alter the production for DFS for us. I think the no-brainer is Covington's going to go out there and just do what he does. He's a machine, and I think that there's more upside with him than obviously Jorge Masvidal because of just the way that he fights. I think that there's plenty of sneaky 9,000 options this week. Not really any of the 9,000 options that I hate. I love Umar Nurmagomedov. I wish he wasn't so expensive because I do think that he can put up like a pretty close score to whatever Covington does tonight.
Are we fading Kelleher and or Moicano?
Yeah, I'm fading Kelleher 100% just because I believe in Nurmagomedov. I really think that the skills are there in all facets of the game. For me, Moicano is not a part of many of my lineups, if at all. I think that a lot of people are playing Moicano because he's a $7,000 underdog, essentially in a 5-round fight, and they're just viewing it for what it is. You're probably like almost a quarter of the field going to be playing Renato Moicano, and I just, for me, I'm way under the field on that one.
Yeah, I think the thing about tonight's slate, and particularly from a GPP aspect, is if RDA goes out there and has an amazing performance, it's going to be hard for him not to be optimal at 7,300. And that's where it becomes roster construction. Like, look, I think his ownership is going to be crazy tonight, but a way to get different from him is not putting him in your lineups and trying to go somewhere else to create a different lineup.
What's your guess on his ownership tonight? I want to see if we're
65%.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of silly to even be that low. It's not a gimme fight by any means, but like he's priced totally incorrectly for this matchup.
If you told me his ownership was 73%, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think 3/4 of the field having it makes a ton of sense.
Let's see. Next up says I'm playing Kobe Covington on DraftKings, so I was going to captain Masvidal on FanDuel to hedge. Do you think Masvidal or Hardy is the better captain if I have both on FanDuel?
Yeah, you're kind of playing. Yeah, like hedging is good, but you're also playing. I don't know. How would you take that one, Jason?
I'd rather take the shot on Hardy.
I think so too, because like, I don't know, you're betting against yourself and also somewhat limiting yourself too.
So Dylan says, who would you choose in the first fight for a parlay? I would go with Dustin Jacoby.
If you're a
I
safe
would not
guy,
feel great about it.
if you're a safe guy, I just would avoid that first fight. Avoid a lot
Look,
this week.
This is a question me and Pete were going last night. It's like, if you had to sit there and label out your three most confident plays, you can 1 and 2 I think is pretty easy to come up with. That third most confident play is the one that becomes tough when you're trying to do a 3-fighter parlay.
Absolutely. Vegas is going to make some money tonight. And it's because of everybody just thinking that some fights are automatic.
Yeah. Who is a fighter we're not talking about? I have a name on top. That's all in mind.
All right, you go. I'll let you know.
Tim Elliott.
Trash.
Wow. See, this is my thing, is because of his fighting abilities, especially on DraftKings.
Yeah.
If he's able to style, he's a guy that he just, in terms of a fantasy play, has the ability to bring a ton of points. I'm not saying I like him to win the fight. I'm just saying, we always talk about there's always a fighter we're not talking about. Tim Elliott, to me, would be one of those guys. I'd probably say Alex Cowboy Oliveira is another one.
Yeah. So for Elliott, I mean, I kind of said it before. It's just, I don't see his upside in this matchup. I see his upside against other fighters that he has the wrestling advantage. And, you know, in scrambling situations, even in the Brandon Royval fight, who's extremely dangerous, you see him, you know, kind of wilt under the pressure at times, and his cardio isn't the best. And, you know, just kind of mixing things up is where he will have success, especially on the feet. I think he's going to want to avoid grappling with Ulanbekov. So the fighter we're not talking about, might be Ludovic Klein. Truthfully, it really might be.
Yeah. Next up says, is it worth getting to the main event in your opinion? It's worth getting it to it. I will say this: I'm less than the field on Colby Covington.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to get different this week, right? And I'm hoping that some weird things happen in the main event, and that my other favorites and other 9,000 options come through a little bit. I'm just slightly under the field on Colby Covington, but you can expect the majority of people are going to be targeting main event first.
Someone asked about how we feel about Michal Oleksiejczuk. I just go back to the conversation I had with Dustin Jacoby, where he talked about, literally the direct quote was, I have to be, concerned about the power that Oleksiejczuk does have.
I'm worried about Dustin Jacoby getting hit. Truthfully, like, you know, if he allows Michal Oleksiejczuk to get inside that distance, that's where the power can really just, you know, eat you up. And he is a southpaw, so we'll have to see. But Dustin Jacoby can go both ways. All in all, can't wait to see the screenshots tonight, and excited to see how these fights play out. So definitely tweet at us at PTE MMA, at Jason_Floyd. We appreciate you guys like crazy.
Of course, coming up next is NBA Deeper Dive, as the guys are going to get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. So look forward to seeing all those winning screenshots. Of course, myself and Pete will be back here next week for the UFC Fight Night card that, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you who the main event is because I live on a week-by-week basis.
Same, bro. I have no idea.
Even Tyler was shaking his head. Tyler's like, yeah, I don't know either. But that is going to do it for this edition of Live Before Lock. You can lock here at Awesemo.com. As coming up next is NBA Deeper Dive. Have a good Saturday night, everybody.